You've tuned into Bellingham Podcast Media Tech for the week of I Don't Know, because we are in Spokane, Washington.
The east side of Washington.
The east side.
That's
from
right.
the west side to the east side. I'm AJ Barce.
And I'm Chris Powell. Today we are talking about the Building Bridges Washington State Higher Education Technology Conference.
Where is that?
That is currently at the Davenport Grand Hotel in the heart of downtown Spokane.
It's in the middle of Spokane?
The middle Spokane.
Middle Spokane.
I'm not a native, but I've been here a couple times, and I got to say I have been completely blown away by the Davenport Grand Hotel staff, the whole hotel in itself, and the experience that Building Bridges has had so far. First day of the conference here, a happy camper.
Oh yeah, no. If you Google the Davenport, first of all, there are 3 Davenports here in Spokane. There's the Davenport proper, the Davenport Towers, which is actually where I thought our conference was.
Yeah.
So late last night, I went to the wrong Davenport by accident.
Learning experience. What a nice surprise, huh?
Well, because I forgot that this one was out here.
Yes.
So we're down by the river. If you Google us on Google Maps, you'll notice that on the south side of the establishment, you'll have the wonderful railroad tracks, the railroad that actually cuts through Spokane, Washington. And on the north side, you'll have the wonderful waterfront that Spokane is all well known for. And the place is schwank, for lack of better terms.
It's a good way of describing it.
Very stylistic, very modern, a lot of good geometry, and you should like it. There's a lot of black and white.
It's the contrast in colors and design, and there's not advertising everywhere. There's beautiful artwork. There's like water everywhere in some of the fixtures. No, there's no leaks in the place. It's actually just like the little waterfalls as you walk in. I feel at home.
Yeah, no, this is very much Chris Powellville.
Yes. So here is a curiosity, though. Mm-hmm. We are in Spokane.
Yep.
We are not in Bellingham like we normally are. How the heck are we able to do this podcast without a recording studio or without a coffee shop?
That is an excellent question, Chris. If you look at BellinghamPodcast.com, you'll notice that there is a post on there with a workflow of how you can do what we do, which is you have a iPhone 6, I have an iPhone 5S, or no, you have 6S.
I got the beast.
You have the beast, the iPhone 6S, I have an iPhone 5S, and we have 2 mics and 2 headphones, and we're going to town.
With the app on the phones, we are able to record
anywhere, anytime, any place.
And that's the beautiful part about this, because with iOS and this app, wherever you want, you got a bar mitzvah, you got a birthday party, you got a bridge club meeting.
If you're a student and you have a class and you need to podcast, English 101, if you're listening, because I mentioned this in class, guess what? This is what we're doing. But no, that's what's great about this. And what's funny is that the theme of this whole Building Bridges conference is really looking at future tech and using it practically and getting it into the higher education setting so that students get exposure doing this type of stuff. Or faculty, same way.
Exactly. And with faculty and with students, we're building the bridge, hence the term for the conference, between what has been done before and how students are demanding this technology happen. Here's how the bridge can be built so that instructors can effectively instruct and give them incentive to want to learn. Lots of great material. I'm actually
dense at times.
There's a lot of meat.
There is a lot of meat at this conference. That's why I like this conference.
Yes,
actually.
Absolutely.
Like I purposefully try to get for full disclosure, Chris Powell and I are both presenting at this conference.
That's correct.
I had 2 sessions today. I believe you have a session tomorrow.
I have 2 tomorrow.
Yes. 2 tomorrow. And so we're here, and we are not drinking anything. However, Chris, what is over my shoulder?
That would be a Starbucks espresso bar inside the Davenport Hotel. Yes.
So in the tradition of BPM, we are indeed at a cafe.
At least there is coffee being served in nearby.
As well as other libations.
Behind my shoulder, if you were actually watching this, there is a lounge over here. It's not quite
in black.
It's not quite beer 30 at this point.
No.
We took a break from the conference because, quite frankly, I can only handle about 6 hours of consecutive information absorption before I have to take a break. And so I've been listening a lot, and quite frankly, AJ, it's time to talk for a while.
Let's chat. Okay. So what are some? Let's start off observations.
Yes.
This is a bingo game that
A
you and
bingo,
I
okay.
usually do.
Yes.
Whenever we go to a specific location or a different side of the, in this case, the state, we look at what people are bringing with them. What are some of the observations you see of the participants here at Building Bridges?
Well, what I'm seeing right now, I am seeing a lot of laptops still, lots of big mobile phone devices. I'm seeing a lot of hands outstretched to have the phablet, as I was made fun of when I first had one.
It's fabulous.
It's a fabulous phablet, but quite honestly, I'm a little disappointed. Washington State Higher Education Technology Conference attendees, I don't see any iPad Pros in the house. I have an iPad Pro. I only see laptops and that other wannabe from Microsoft.
The Surface?
Yes, the Surface.
Surface.
The plural of Surface, yeah. So anyway, I'm seeing a lot of mobile devices. I see an iPad Mini, a couple here and there.
Lots of minis.
Yeah.
Lots of minis.
So portability evidently prevails for conference attendees, but definitely taking a lot of notes, and a lot of people are on Twitter. I'm seeing a lot of the hashtag WSHETC16 for how this is being live streamed in some way for the Twitter thing. You bringing this up on your Twitter feed?
Yep. I'm actually going to. So something I want to point out. Earlier in the day, Chris and I were actually talking about this, and this is a perfect case point for multitasking on iOS. And for you have the gargantuan over there.
Yes.
And you've got, for instance, Quip with our show notes. You also have your, what is that, Apple Notes?
That's Apple Notes, yes. Well, with iPad Pro, I get a split screen functionality, and I've been able to, while I'm away from the office, I'm able to check work email in between conference presentations. I could also check out the Twitter feed and email my family or text message friends with the built-in messages app. So I got everything I need right here. It's pretty slick.
And something else I'd like to point out is, that is an exclusive quote-unquote feature for the iPad Pro and equivalent. I think the new iPad Air, whatever they're calling it, I think that's exclusive for that, where you can actually scale the windows in between, correct?
Yeah, it's sizable windows depending on the app, because there are some that you may not have that size. It's not developed for the split screen functionality. Stay tuned, there'll be more later. But
right.
In the meantime, it's happening. And so with the iPad Pro, I'm a fan.
Yeah.
And I like being able to have two things open at the same time with a fairly decent screen size.
So something else that I was pointing out to you is that the older iPads do have similar feature sets. We get what I call the peak version of it, where you can swipe from the right and you get basic multi-gesture.
Like Peekaboo.
Yep. And it's apps like Twitter. Basically, any of the apps that are in the App Store for iPhone, you kind of get you swipe over and you can get the iPhone view of that app and then swipe it out of the way in between apps. And so what I've been doing for the conference is using either Quip or using Apple Notes, and then I have Twitter over on the right-hand side. I can swipe, I can take a look at the hashtag and get back, It's an interesting use of that type of technology. Most of the time, I have it disabled. I hate the multitasking thing because it gets in the way, especially on a smaller screen. But for a conference, I have to say, it's nice to have that feed of what people are talking about while you're in a session, and you're also paying attention to this session that you're in. It's cool conversation.
Well, as we were listening to the keynote this afternoon by Mark Miller, and I was seeing just almost a live feed. He would come up with a big point. And boom, there's like 3 or 4 people echoing what he's echoing. And here's a great way. What did he say? People are tweeting it. And tweeting the highlights. There were a couple of questions asked in there. A little bit of room for conversation. It's been pretty. It's a great way to augment your experience, depending on where you're at in the conference.
So before we get to Mark and on our keynote, any other observations that you noticed? I mean, I've noticed one thing that kind of surprised me is there is a lot of smartwatches up in this place.
Yeah, the Apple Watch, and I guess when you're in higher ed or in technology, you got to bust out the smart wearables, huh?
Yeah, I was just surprised. Like almost every other person I see has like a Fitbit, or they've got an Apple Watch. Lots of Apple Watches. A couple of Samsung the Gear Watch.
Samsung Gear or Moto 360 or something like that.
Yeah, a lot of them. Chris, you and I are both still rocking the archaic, analog.
Yeah.
No batteries required.
But of course, I do have a tracker. No, I'm not out of prison release program, but I do have a fitness tracker with a Fitbit just because I like seeing my wrist vibrate when I get 10,000 steps. That's a nice little attaboy for walking around this big Davenport Grand hotel.
Big hotel.
At this point, I am currently at 4,500 steps today. Thank you very much.
Yes, and it is 5 before 4 o'clock on. What is this, Thursday?
This is Thursday.
Oh
yeah.
my gosh.
Thursday, the 14th, I believe.
Yes.
One thing I gotta give a shout out to once again. Have I not gushed enough over the Davenport Grand staff and
Wait,
amenities?
what?
Yeah,
You're gushing?
I'm a fan. But
Interesting.
basically, I want to give props to the amount of wireless connectivity that is available. Whenever we go to tech conferences, sing along if you know the words.
We take it down.
When you get about, let's see, 600 devices, and that's mobile phones, laptops, tablets, connecting to a wireless access point,
it's not pretty.
You're going to have a bad time.
Yes.
And I was in the keynote in the big grand ballroom, and I'm doing immediate refreshes on my Tweetbot app, and it was not sweating.
No.
And so to be able to have that kind of infrastructure, hello, conference organizers, here's a valid idea or a place for you to have a conference over here in the Inland Empire.
Yeah, Inland Empire. That is a colloquialism over here.
I got all your colloquialisms. I'm just warming up.
Yep, but no, I mean, now, this morning it was a little dicey. There was some Wi-Fi issues to start for the first couple of sessions. I got hit by it, as well as some other issues with their landline, just their Cat5 that's in the wall. But again, after the first, maybe hour or two of the conference, it did smooth out.
Well, perhaps, this has been open less than a year from what the fine gentleman who picked me up at the airport for shuttle service said. This Davenport Grand's been open, I think, 2015 in May or so. And, I would imagine the routers got hit hard first thing in the morning. They needed a cup of coffee to get the traffic routed successfully, and it's unfortunate that you had to contend with that. But when we've presented at conferences, we always have Plan B and Plan C.
Yes. So Conference 101, if you've never been, or if you're going to, you always, on a USB or two, keep a backup of your presentation.
That's right.
And don't put it in PowerPoint. Do it as a PDF, because you never know. You might get a laptop that say, PowerPoint isn't installed.
Best practices, no charge.
Yep.
Exactly.
So let's get back to the keynote. So we had Dr. Mark Milleron. He's a co-founder and the chief learning officer for Civitas Learning.
Civitas, yep.
And he was here, I believe he was here last year for Building Bridges. He is a great keynote, well spoken in the education and tech community, and he had a lot of good, I'll call it futurism stuff with regards to education. One of the things he talked about is the great, I'm summarizing here, but the great e-textbook debate.
Yes.
Students, sing along if you know the words, students pay out the nose for their textbooks. Okay, and that is dead trees bound with glue that dead horses had to be provided for. Okay, now in the day of digital, why are students paying so much for this vetted information that we call a textbook?
The new emerging issue of 2016.
Right. Now, what was an interesting point for me is that he points out it's not getting any better. Even though we're not killing trees, e-textbooks are still really expensive.
Yeah.
And so, Chris, what do you think in the future? Are we going to see either one, free, open, or a good pricing model, for lack of better terms, the iTunesification, as it were, of textbooks?
Well, for what it's worth, if you're buying a textbook for the entire book, and the instructor's only teaching chapters 1 through 10, here's the iTunes model of instead of buying a CD or the entire album, you pick off the 4 songs you want.
The Kindle single of textbooks.
But what I'm seeing is open education resources. Is that the
OER? Yeah.
That's a buzzword that was demonstrated a
lot through this conference.
It was your bingo card gets filled with that one for the Higher Ed Tech Conference, OER. I just see that the demand is going to be for online having your reference online, available on your mobile phone.
Yeah.
That's where students are at right now. Everyone's got a mobile phone. It's attached to their hand. It's like super glued or embedded inside their DNA.
Yep.
And they don't want to carry around books. They want to carry one device to do it all. It'll take a lot of tenured faculty and a lot of those that have been using books and printouts and what was the document camera?
The Elmos and stuff. Yeah,
that's been done for 30 years, and that has served a generation. There's a new generation. It's emerging quickly.
Yes,
and you got to be able to adapt with where those that are paying the tuition money are demanded.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was grammatically correct, but you get what I'm saying.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
But again, for me, I look at it as like, if it's going to be the Amazoning or the iTunesification of textbooks. It is, publishers have not figured this out yet. I mean, as a matter of fact, our keynote pointed out, like back in the day, we had the textbook, and then the internet got created. And so what did publishers do? They stuck a DVD with other content on there. Okay, and then the web got faster, and so now you had a portal. You had to pay for the book, and then you get a little code. And you probably remember this. That code, if you sell your book, that code doesn't work for the person who buys the used copy now, and you have to buy another one. So why'd you buy a used book? Like it's convoluted for students. I feel their frustration.
It's a super secret decoder ring that you got to dig into the box of cereal to be able to get the awesome message from Captain Fantastic.
Which leads me to the question of, if the publishers already have the content, why can't we pay a subscriptions a la Netflix and just get the content online?
Is this rhetorical? Because I got an answer for that.
Okay, well, give me an answer.
Because the publishers want to make money off of it.
Oh, that's right. No, and I get that. Like, when it comes to academia, we need to vet it. We can't live off of Wikipedia, okay? You have to have people who are experts in the field, who have done the research, who can vet the information, and I get that. And people need to be paid for that. I completely agree. But, I mean, I've written for academic textbooks. It's not a glory. I don't make a lot of money. As a matter of fact, on 2 chapters that I've co-authored, I've made no money. None.
So why did you do it, though?
Because I wanted to contribute. 1, I was a grad student. I want to contribute back. And 2, I have my master's, and I wanted to contribute. Part of academia is sharing. Oh, by the way, we blog.
Yes.
I do the same thing. But the thing is that, for people, academics who are making a living at this, yes, I want to pay them, but I feel like the publisher is getting most of the, either 1, the credit, but 2, the paycheck.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second.
Go for it. That's why I thought I'd pick this topic.
The publishers will get the majority of the money, but there are those in higher education that will create their own documentation and put it into what do you call those little plastic teeth binder things?
Yeah. It's every campus calls it differently. I think our institution it's course materials.
Sure.
Yeah.
But basically, if the instructor is creating their own documentation, bypassing a publication house, and they're getting the proceeds for it, what is the incentive for them to put it online? Why? Here's a way you can avoid the publication costs. But now you got another revenue source, and they're not going to want to give up that revenue stream.
Oh, I know. I guess my thing. This is my content creator side flaring up right now. Is that it is the academics that are doing the research, that are putting it together, who are vetting it, and then we have to go to a publisher, and then they have to do their vetting, and then they have to do their marketing, and then we have to. I mean. I don't, there's no silver bullet. I don't have an answer for it, but it's frustrating for me because I see. I look at the brain trust that is here on this first floor of the Grand, and I'm looking, going, wow, there is a lot of people here that could self-publish, and students would benefit from it, and the money that the students would be paying would go directly to the content creator, a la the academic.
Yes.
The e-textbook debate is very hot. OER, that open resource, is definitely also being hot. Matter of fact, Cable Green, who is, I think he's stationed over in Olympia. He's like one of the spearheads when it comes to OER.
Okay.
So like in our backyard, Washington State definitely is on the edge of this OER revolution of open educational resources and such. I mean, 3D printing, which is one of the sessions I gave, I talk about the Creative Commons. Like, biology students can print an anatomically correct skull as opposed to spending $35 at the bookstore to get one that was made probably in China.
About maybe 10 years ago, anyone who said that you'd be able to buy particular songs individually,
that's cray-cray.
It's crazy, and that will never happen because the music companies are in control of everything. Well, guess what?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter now. That changed in a decade. OER has got some teeth to it because the situation or that stalemate that is within publishers, content creators,
students. It's going to be interesting, and I think that's going to be a topic that you and I are going to keep our eyes on because if Netflix can figure out streaming, then I don't know, Bookflix. We should get that domain quick.
To bookflix.com.
Bookflix.com for students or something, because what has happened, and I know you and I probably turn a blind eye to this, but you and I both know there is the black market of digital ebooks. Yeah. Students scan them, they put them up on repositories, they download it because they're trying to cut the cost.
Well, their budgets and their efforts to try and get an education are getting guillotined by the costs. It's a barrier to entry with the costs that are involved with it, and that is a necessity that is unethical, immoral, and illegal, but this is what they have to do in order to get to their end
goal.
The means to their ends.
Yep.
So let's talk about happier things.
Let's talk about happier things. So one of the exercises that the keynote made us do, and it was funny because if you followed Twitter when this happened, he asked, "Hey, would the person right to the left of you, would you please pass your device to them?" Yeah. Chris, do you have some thoughts on this? Because you were just sitting there with some crossed arms.
Well, first of all, I'm not a joiner, and when the keynote had another interactive, engaging exercise for everyone to clap, and then fold their fingers, like
it was
here's
fun.
the churches. It's fun, but I'm not a joiner, and I'm like, my hands are already folded nicely in my lap.
You're comfortable.
I'm comfortable,
You're
but
cozy.
then when you say pass your mobile device,
wow,
to
I just saw your laser beams. You were like, say what?
Yeah, I'm like, I don't think so.
But what was funny is the conversation on Twitter was #security for physical devices is still alive. Yes. Like, that was interesting. The fact that, at this conference, there's been sessions that was talking about new wireless infrastructure where we can track the users on that network, and we get all of this data because we're academics and we love data. However, it comes down to, one, do people know that they're being tracked? And two, our physical devices, are you safe enough to hand it to somebody else that's at the same conference?
Well, first of all, I would say people really either they think they're being tracked and they are blissfully callous or uncaring, apathetic to it, because if they cared about it, Facebook would no longer exist.
Yes.
As far as the trust that is in a conference where you will have groups of people that kind of know each other during a lunch break, passing a phone to each other. Yeah, I knew the person to my right. Yeah. He's all good, but I'm still not giving him my phone.
Right.
No, I'm a private person. That's my introvert nature. Mm-hmm. You want me to stand up and then hug someone to my right?
I would pay to see money.
Yeah, no.
I would pay money to see that.
Unless
that would
you're
be
my
funny.
wife or my daughter or my mom.
Bro hug.
No, not even a bro hug. I'm sorry. No. Stop that. And then to do this, I forgot what it was, it was a type of African ritual where you put your forehead against someone and breathe breath of life. I'm like, my introvert switch got flipped back, and I'm like, check please, I'm sitting back down.
I could tell.
I'm done.
I could tell.
But let's at least go back to happier things. Great keynotes.
Yeah, no, great keynote.
Yeah.
I just thought it was really interesting from a social perspective.
Yes.
How we are so guarded when it comes to our data and our device, the two Ds, okay, D&D as it were.
Well, I was reading on the on the Twitter feed involving this conference. There was one person that talked about how their iPhone, is part of their identity, and so I found that to be rather interesting, because I chose a big phone. I'm a big guy. I like saying mine's bigger from a technological standpoint.
Thank you.
Anyway,
let's keep it clean.
That's right. But how many people buy phones because it's cheap? How many people buy phones because of the functionality you get? How many people buy it because of what kind of case you could put on it?
Or brand affinity.
Exactly.
Apple has really been touting that they are a lifestyle brand.
Yep.
And yes, you're right. Looking around, you can see people who are buying into the ecosystem because of the affinity towards a specific brand. Whether it's Apple or Samsung, I mean, it doesn't matter. Like, there are very divided camps, Mac and PC, as it were, all over again.
And Apple and Android, too.
Apple and Android, etc.
But the question is, going back to that, how comfortable are you with sharing your brand identity with someone else?
Yeah.
We're all guarded about it. There are those who are like, yeah, I know you. There's this level of trust. But if you see me next to you, I'm a stranger. You don't, and I'm a big guy.
Stranger danger.
That's right.
Stranger danger.
You don't know what I'm capable of. and some people, they didn't wash their hands.
Oh, true. Yeah,
And
fair
so
enough.
I'm a little bit of insight into my psyche, why I didn't pass my phone out.
I gotcha.
I know the guy next to me, he's cool and all that, but I just, no. I want my germs on my phone. End of discussion. Next topic.
I gotcha. One thing I do want to say is during the keynote, it was good to hear that, education and technology, that we're not adversaries. We are trying to embrace it and stuff. We did a lot of good focus points on the fact that education, when it comes to data, we do have this fetish, I guess, with what he called the post-mortem of data.
Autopsy of data.
Thank you, autopsy of data.
That was a great, that was tweeted a lot.
Yeah, that was a really good point because, and as a teacher, I've seen this, I get scores of my students from last year when I was teaching K-12, right? And in higher ed, we still do the same thing. Like, we, as an institution, we look at data last year to try to forecast forward.
It's a Monday morning quarterback.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was a really interesting point to hear.
Well, it's something that can be evaluated that is a low risk method, because if you're trying to analyze what's going to happen, no one's got the magic 8 ball, no one's got the crystal ball.
No.
It's a lot easier to talk about what has happened versus what will happen. Kind of what we're talking about OER and what things will be like with e-textbooks in the future.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier. It's a lot more comfy to talk about what happened versus what we can do to make things better.
So on that same regard, I also like the fact that he talked about with our future students, academia is actually looking towards the gamer community, which this is not a new concept. That is actually what he said. And it was funny because the moment that he said, I'm like, well, yeah, games have been around since the dawn of civilization. Backgammon was to help teach I think it was the days of the month or the days of the year, or months of the year. If you look at chess, it's about strategy. Games were made to help people learn. Chutes and ladders, snakes and ladders, depending on which generation you come from. Hungry Hippos.
I love that game.
It's just interesting that now, fast forward, I'll say 300 years, and now we're looking at video games. The fact that now people have to be social while game. They have to work as a team online.
On quests.
To level up. And these are all things that we do in the professional world. If you want to be just a mid-level drone, then you just don't do anything. You keep status quo. If you want to ascend in the ranks of whatever you're doing in life, you have to work together, you have to be innovative, and it was a good juxtaposition. It was good to hear an academic say that.
It's not just badges, and it's not just the coins
We don't
you
need
get.
no stinking badges.
We don't need no stinking badges. But what we do need is incentive.
Exactly.
And I think in a lot of ways...
Achievement unlocked.
Exactly. And once you get that, there's an endorphin rush.
Yeah.
Where is the incentive in the professional environment? Where is the incentive in the higher education learning business model?
Wait. So the old adage of A's gets degrees. Oh, no. It's C's that gets degrees. I hate that old adage, and students know it all too well, and it's unfortunate. For students, the only real incentive they see is their final grade. And my teacher hat's coming on here. Formative versus summative assessment. You gauge your student in the progress of their learning, and you look at them as how are they coming up with the answer, more so than did they get the answer.
Yeah.
Because when you get in the work world, you may come up to a problem that cannot be solved. How do you deal with that?
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends and neighbors, I've been a professional IT tech for about 20 years now, and I have never encountered a situation where I have answer A, answer B, answer C, or all of the above to a tech problem.
Wait, what?
This is your shock face, right?
Blue screen of death.
There's got to be the demonstration of knowledge is important to be able to regurgitate what someone has told you in efforts to get a letter grade, it's not an assimilation of knowledge. No. It's not an accurate description of knowledge. I think I need to take my happy pills because I'm getting a little amped up right now because I'm hearkening back to my college experience back in the dark ages.
Ages?
It was 20 years ago, sucker. But it was... Things have to change as far as a demonstrating ability. That's the way that degrees should be earned, in my humble, not so humble opinion.
Humble, not so.
So, I'm off my soapbox now.
I love it. So let's segue to one other thing that I have here.
Yes.
And that is, he was mentioning that he just came from a conference over in Europe.
Yes.
And he said that open access testing is the kind of the big topic that they have over there. And specifically, they're researching how one comes up. I'm going to use the British one here. How one comes up with the said answer, and that's what they're focusing on. And that was really it dovetails with what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. C's get degrees. That's the old adage here in the U.S. educational system. Whereas, in life, there is no such thing as really a C, an A, a D, an F minus, whatever. We're talking about skills. Students need to have a certain repository of knowledge base, skills, and just common sense.
That is part of one of the things that they should be learning in higher education, post high school. How do you exist in society with common sense? Because there will be rules that are far greater than going to the principal's office.
Dum, dum, dum.
That's right. So, but how does one get the information they need? That's an entire different podcast.
I know.
That we could talk about.
Yeah.
But as far as we're only halfway through this conference,
right?
But it was. I'm looking at AJ during a break. I'm like, dude, I am kind of overloaded with all this information to process.
Well, we have to verbalize all this stuff, right?
We have to talk about it.
Like that is part of being a practitioner of education, is
Yes.
that we have to reflect on what the heck we are listening so that we can make it practical.
And how
all of this podcast.
Exactly, and how much of a blessing it is to us that we get to have the freedom to be able to say this without threat of retribution.
Yeah.
And yeah, I know I slagged Microsoft Surface for a little bit back there, but that's a different story. For us to be able to talk out loud, some of y'all out there in podcast land might resonate with a couple of comments that we make.
Yeah.
Some of y'all might be bristling at some of the comments that we make. While that fosters great conversation, it's wonderful to be in a conference where there's so much activity and so much energy. And, by the way, we're presenting.
Yes.
So we get a chance to contribute to that mind hive of information. And here's a way that we get a chance to disseminate it.
So if one wanted to, perhaps if they were agreeing on something that we were saying, or if they wanted to chime in on what they were saying, how could they call into the show and perhaps get featured onto our... onto the show?
That's a really good question. There's a Twitter hashtag, BHAM podcast, that you can tweet, and AJ and I happen to notice that, and we kind of respond to that. But there's also something as far as a voicemail number, should you have a mobile phone or a landline phone like the ringtone that's ringing in the background right now.
Is there a landline somewhere?
Take a message. I'm busy right now. Area code 201-731-8324. That's 201-731-TECH. That's a voicemail that you leave us any kind of comment about what we were talking about in this higher education tech conference.
As long as it's nice.
Please phrase your feedback in a nice manner. We appreciate that. Or if you want, ask us a question about what we think about something, or ask us a follow-up question, or challenge us. We'd love to be able to have a dialogue, have a discussion on a future podcast.
Yep. And again, you can also just send us out through the hashtag BHAM podcast, and we'll check that as well as the actual official hashtag for this conference, which is we had it backwards.
I added a 20 because I was a little verbose.
WS Heck 16.
Washington State Higher Education Technology Conference 16, WSHETC 16.
That's it.
EIEIO.
Oh.
So anyway, we'll be around for another day, then we're flying back tomorrow.
Yep.
So.
Or at worst case scenario, Chris, how can somebody find you on the internet?
Oh, heck, Google Chris Powell Bellingham, or if you want, check out chrispowell.co. It's my landing page. I've got links to a bunch of other stuff. And I On Twitter, I've been a little verbal on this conference hashtag, but I'm Minimal Tech, MNMLTEK. I'm so minimal, I don't really like vowels. How about you, AJ? How can someone get in touch with you?
Well, they can always follow me on Patreon. That's patreon.com/AJ Barsay. Matter of fact, a shout out to Patreon. I actually was talking about them in one of my sessions with regards to using crowdsourcing and getting students exposed to the skills of crowdsourcing to get them funded on the stuff they want to do.
I was in attendance with that presentation, not just because I'm a fan of Mr. Barsay, but also I support my buds, and I was interested in how crowdsourcing, crowdfunding could help out the higher education student experience. A lot of heads are nodding, a lot of follow-up questions, and I think you got mobbed after your presentation.
I slightly did.
Yes.
It was awesome.
Yes.
But other than that, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at AJ Barsay, and then there's my website, ajbarsay.com. That wraps it up for this special edition, as it were, of BPM Tech. Thank you so much for joining us.
And we'll see you next time on Bellingham Podcast Media Tech.
We'll follow up. Thank you all.
Thanks a lot.